Welcome, listeners, to the spoken testimony of the Shield Protocol. We bring a question to the sacred text today. What lessons from failed replication attempts, whether in artistic rendering or bas-relief, underscore the unique and non-replicable nature of the divine image? We begin with the lead verse from John chapter 7, verse 10. It says that when his brethren were gone up, then he went up also to the festival, not openly, but as it were in secret. The Son moves outside the constraints of public spectacle and human scheduling. The true manifestation of the divine image does not operate as a mass-produced commodity or a public display engineered for the masses. It moves in the hidden, sovereign timing of the Father. Failed replication attempts often err by seeking to force the image into the open, treating it as a static object to be captured and controlled, rather than a living mystery to be encountered in the secret place of the Most High. Human attempts to replicate this image fail because they try to capture a living mystery with dead materials. 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 4 and 5 identifies the Messiah as a living stone, rejected indeed of men, but chosen of Elohim, and the faithful are built up as lively stones. Artistic replication relies on dead, static matter. The true image possesses a life force that cannot be carved or cast. This is echoed in Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 4, which observes that a living dog is better than a dead lion. A humble, living covenantal reality surpasses a majestic but lifeless replication. The true image breathes with divine life, while the bas-relief does not. The divine imprint is a singular, non-reversible event. Ezekiel chapter 46, verse 9 provides a striking geometric metaphor for this non-replicability. It declares that he will not return by the way of the gate in which he came in, but will go out the opposite way. Human artisans attempt to reverse engineer the image, tracing the steps backward to replicate the form. Yet the movement of the sacred spirit is non-repetitive. The gate is closed to backward traversal, and the path of the Son cannot be mapped and copied by human hands. Furthermore, the text warns against blurring the sacred and the common. Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 26 indicts those who have put no difference between the sacred and common and have hidden their eyes from the Sabbaths. When the holy image is reduced to artistic merchandise or common display, this boundary is violated. The true pattern is formed not by the artisan's chisel, but by the overshadowing presence of the Almighty. Exodus chapter 25, verse 20 describes the cherubim stretching their wings above, overshadowing the covering lid with their wings. The image is a shadow cast by the divine presence, not a shape carved by human technique. Isaiah chapter 53, verse 10 reveals the origin of the true image, stating that it pleased the Lord to bruise him, making his life a priestly offering for guilt. The image is forged in the furnace of covenantal suffering and priestly consecration. It cannot be sculpted, only participated in through faith. Conversely, human manufacturing is exposed as transient. In Mark chapter 13, verse 2, the Son points to the great buildings of human architecture and asks, "See here these great buildings," implying their eventual destruction. We must also recognize the failure of human manufacture when it turns away from the divine command. 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 10 and 11 records the word of the Lord coming to Samuel, saying it sorrows him that he has set up Saul to be king, because he has turned back from following him and has not performed his commandments. This turning back highlights the inability of human effort to sustain the divine image. Yet the Lord provides a way of return. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 18 speaks of Ephraim bemoaning himself, disciplined and admonished as a bull calf unaccustomed to the yoke, crying out for the Lord to turn him so that he may be turned. Acts chapter 26, verses 17 and 18 declares the mission of delivering people from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to Elohim, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a priestly inheritance among them that are consecrated by faith. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 24 asks, "Man's steps are of Yhweh. How can a man then understand his own way?" The artisan cannot replicate what he cannot comprehend. The true image is not an object to be copied, but an identity to be inherited in its appointed season. The mathematical verdict of this draw seals this textual narrative with absolute certainty. The inquiry resolves to a lean yes, with the probability of yes at 97.1%, the probability of no at 2.7%, and unresolved at 0.2%. This is classified as a strong anomaly, indicating a profound departure from random expectation. The triple convergence standard fires at an extraordinary level, reaching 6.23 sigma. This discovery level sigma indicates that the Father is speaking to the full architecture of covenantal standing. The guided draw E value confirms that this thematic cluster of living stones, untraceable paths, and priestly offerings is mathematically locked together. The image cannot be replicated because it is not merely a visual pattern. It is a covenantal identity, an eternal inheritance, and an age-lasting priesthood. Numbers chapter 25 verse 13 speaks of the covenant of an age-lasting priesthood because he was zealous for his Elohim and made a propitiatory covering for the covenant children of Israel. You cannot manufacture a standing before the Father, nor can you replicate an eternal priesthood through artistic endeavor. The true image is established in the midst of the covenant community. Joshua chapter 8, verse 33, describes all Israel, their elders, officers, and judges, standing on this side of the ark and on that side before the priests, the Levites, which carried the ark of the covenant. The image is experienced in the living assembly, not isolated in a static monument. Matthew chapter 13 verse 24 puts forth another parable, saying the kingdom of the cosmos is compared to a man that sowed good seed in his field. The image grows as living seed, not as carved stone. Genesis chapter 31 verse 13 records the Elohim of Bethel commanding his servant to get up and leave, and return to the covenant inheritance land of his relatives. The image is tied to a specific, divinely appointed inheritance, a promised land that cannot be replicated in a foreign territory or fashioned from common clay. Revelation chapter 22 verse 5 promises that night shall not exist anymore, and they shall not need light of a lamp or light of a sun, because the Lord Elohim will shed light upon them. The ultimate reality of the divine image is an eternal, uncreated light that renders all artificial illumination and all artistic replication entirely obsolete. The workstation facilitates this encounter, yielding to the clear testimony of the text. We must therefore understand the lessons of these failed replication attempts. They fail because they attempt to capture a living mystery with dead materials, to trace a path that the Spirit has intentionally made non-reversible, and to reduce a sacred covenantal offering to a common artistic object. The true image moves in secret and is forged through a priestly offering for guilt. The strong anomaly and the extreme guided draw E value confirm the absolute uniqueness of this manifestation. The answer to our question is clear and affirmative. The lessons from failed replication attempts underscore that the divine image is inherently non-replicable because it is the living breath of Elohim himself, moving in the secret, sovereign timing of the Father, and cannot be contained by the dead hands of men. It is a living reality, an eternal inheritance, and a holy priesthood forever beyond the reach of human artistry and completely secure in the Father's sovereign design. The verses drawn in this Shield 17.12 session were John chapter 7 verse 10, 1 Samuel chapter 15 verse 10 to 11, 1 Samuel chapter 20 verse 14 to 15, Job chapter 21 verse 17, Jeremiah chapter 31 verse 18, Acts chapter 26 verse 17 to 18. This concludes today's interpretation under the Shield protocol.